Can you introduce yourself, name, pronouns, and the organization that you run?
Yes, my name is Sarah Trail. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm from the Bay Area, and I started the Social Justice Sewing Academy, a 501c3 nonprofit that teaches young people how to become artivists, agents of social change through textile art.
And can you tell me a little bit about your start as a quilter when you were 6 years old, and a little bit about your family?
Yeah, so I've been sewing since I was 4. My grandparents taught me, and my mom really enhanced my skills. Coming from an only child of 2 college-educated parents, I grew up very, I'd say, middle class slash privileged socioeconomic background, where my mom afforded the opportunity to put me in a lot of sewing lessons. By the time I was 12, I was doing paper-pieced quilts, wedding ring quilts, just advanced level quilts, and it afforded me the opportunity to write a book, have a simplicity pattern collection, have 2 fabric collections, all kind of before 10th grade. So as the catalyst of that, I was teaching a lot of young kids how to sew, but due to the high costs of cotton and the inaccessibility of sewing, I was really teaching very predominantly wealthy, privileged kids how to sew. So as I got to UC Berkeley, I think my socio-political development really peaked, and I became more aware of wanting to not perpetuate systems of privilege by teaching kids who had such means to learn sewing anywhere how to sew. But I think a better use of my time would be bringing sewing into marginalized spaces that are perpetually disadvantaged and disenfranchised from other systems. So bringing it into spaces with Black and brown kids where no one's affording them, home ec classes and sewing, and no one's bringing them, $14 yard batiks to play on. And so I really kind of used, my own privilege to kind of leverage it and bring it into positions where, not as much, socioeconomic, comfort to be able to afford the option of learning how to sew.
So what was the moment that got you to start your organization? Like, was there like a
Yes, I think it was 2012 when Trayvon Martin got murdered. And I think it hit home because Trayvon was born February 5th, 1995, and I'm born February 19th, 1995. So we were literally to the T 14 days apart. And I think seeing his murder and similar to Black Woman Stitch's experience, being in spaces where no one seemed to care that this kid just got killed. And it's like I'm spending my time. These are my mentors. These are my, quilting, it's a community. And so when you have a community that doesn't seem to value, some of the same ideals you do, and I think often, leave politics or don't talk politics, in the sewing space. And it's like things like kids getting murdered aren't politics. That's a lived reality. And being a Black woman in America, that's a part of my immediate reality. So it's more than just, not like, it's not, it really just kind of pivoted and made me shift and said, instead of making quilts about butterflies and flying geese, I started making quilts about unarmed Black boys. And it's like I wanted my quilts to have a message and a purpose bigger than just the process of creating. I love sewing, and I used to love sewing just for the journey. Who cares what destination I get to? And now at this point, I think I don't have the privilege to sew for fun anymore. There's too many things happening as a millennial, between climate change, between Black lives, between queer lives, between income inequality, between feminist abortion rights being, revoked. Like, there's too much stuff going on for me to spend my free time. Like, my free time needs to be spent in forms of activism, in forms of helping, giving back. And so I think merging my favorite thing, which is sewing, with a form of being able to bring awareness and just mobilize. Like there's lots of ways to kind of perpetuate the same message. And so at this point, our activism is just my form.
Yeah, that's pretty good. What does Black Joy mean to the work that you do?
Black Joy. I think Black Joy to me means just centering all forms of self, whether it's fat, queer, able-bodied, disabled, neurodivergent, all of it. Black Joy is just really encompassing all. It's like Black mindfulness. It's Blackfulness. It's celebratory. It's beautiful. It's free. It's unbiased. It's unjudgmental. Like it's just free. I think it's really just not fitting yourself into a box of respectability politics to walk into certain spaces. It's not shrinking yourself. It's not dimming your light. It's being there unapologetically, being there, unwavering and knowing and affirming I belong in this space, I'm welcomed in this space, and even if I'm the only one in this space, I beyond just deserve a seat at the table, but I deserve my voice to be heard the same way as everyone else's.
Yeah. And then the last question is, if you were thinking of the future for your program and the future for Black kids, what would it look and sound like to you?
How it would look, I think it would look like a lot more equity. Like, we always love to talk about equality, and it's like it's more than equality. We need an equity framework. It would look like higher, version of arts programming. It would look like more STEM programming. It would look like, more social, emotional learning programs. It would look like, public schools being really well funded. It would look like public schools looking more like private schools in terms of resources, access, opportunities. It would look like AP, African American history being a mandated part of the curriculum. It would look like ethnic studies being a mandated part of, what you need to graduate, instead of, my history being an elective while white history being mandatory. It looks like inclusivity, and not just inclusivity, it looks like intersectionality. It means hearing from queer authors, black and brown authors, Latinx authors. It means hearing, I think, mind you, I went to a really good school. We never read from one trans author. Why is that a voice that we never heard? And it's like, because my school is, Christian, so they didn't believe in, all the kind of, but I think really just accepting and hearing from other perspectives, and really I think a critical education where it's like you're not just taught this is the truth, but it's like you're taught to investigate and interrogate. I think we need more than just indoctrination. We need less lectures and more, teaching forms of learning. When I hear and read things, it's like, who wrote this? What were their biases? Where is their position of privilege? What, agenda might they have had? What does their own privilege block them from seeing? How does where they grew up make an impact on how they see the world? Like Elon Musk with his South Africa viewpoint is very different than, kid being raised in Oakland. And it's like just being able to hear and read and learn from all. And then, like as my mom says, eat the meat, leave the bones on the table. Not everything that someone says is worthwhile, but there can always, you can pick and choose. And I think just really giving kids the empowerment and the autonomy and the agency to be able to decipher between what they want to, what meat they want to eat and then what bones they want to leave at the table.